That was really inspiring, and we're about to continue the inspiration. Our next speaker is also a pioneer. In 1992, Steve Mann took his wearable inventions from Toronto to Massachusetts Institute of Technology, founding the MIT Media Lab's Wearable Computing Project as its first member. He has been coined the father of wearable computing and a modern-day Leonardo da Vinci, and is the inventor behind countless inventions, including the smartwatch video phone, HDR, and the iTap digital glass, which predates Google Glass by 30 years. He is currently the chief scientist at the Creative Destruction Lab at Rotman's School of Management, co-founder of Interaxon, makers of the brain-sensing headband Muse, and the chief scientist at Meta, who creates wearable AR glasses, who are also out in the exhibit area. Please join me in welcoming Steve Mann to the stage.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to be. I've just followed Tom Furness. I've admired his work for years, and he's really an inspiration to all of us. So it's a real honor to share the stage with such a great mind. I want to talk about phenomenal augmented reality, and I used to often say that augmented reality, we're going to see the rise and fall of augmented reality. And I think what will replace it, of course, is phenomenal mediated reality. So it's sort of wearables and IoT. I want to talk about nature and technology. And so if we look back, there's a lot that's been done. You know, we go back to 1943, you can see this wearable television set, wearable TV screen, and that was one of the things that fascinate. I've always been fascinated by television. This is in 1959, Philco made the Safari, which was the world's first battery-powered portable television. I thought that was really amazing. And in 1961, the same company, 2 years later, Philco made the Headsight HMD, head-mounted display for remote surveillance, mounted to a building. It wasn't portable or wearable in the sense it was building-mounted. But it was an interesting inspiration, and in 1968 Ivan Sutherland made the head-mounted display with computer graphics. Now my own sort of exploration or foray into augmented reality, I guess, was sort of in my childhood. My grandfather taught me to weld when I was 4 years old and see everything dark except this little speck of white light through the dark glass, and I thought there must be a better way, and that's what led me to the invention of HDR and got me playing around with cameras and video displays. One thing that fascinated me was video feedback. If you put a television screen, people would often do this, point a camera at a TV screen to which it's connected and walk around pointing the camera, and it would feedback and make interesting fractal patterns. I was less interested in the fractal patterns, and what I did instead is put the camera in a fixed place and walked around with a TV. Here's a long exposure photograph from many years ago when in a dark room, when I was moving a television receiver around the room, sweeping back and forth the television receiver. And when the television receiver, the camera was transmitting on channel 7, and I noticed that whenever I turned the TV to channel 7 to pick up that signal, it would glow brighter than the other channels if the TV was in the field of view of the camera. And if the TV was outside the field of view of the camera, all the channels would be equally dim. And then I realized I could get the same sort of effect with my surveillance camera with just a 1-pixel display. So when I was 12 years old, I made this 1-pixel augmented reality display with a light bulb. And what it's showing me what the camera can see, the sight field of the camera in a sense, augmented reality. And so here is that light bulb traced around, the locus of it. And if we look at this sequence of images that were done that way. And I still have this apparatus here. It's 41 years old now, and it still works. And I showed it, I did a little workshop, and there's the augmented reality. If I take this lamp here, for example, and I switch it on, when I bring it in view of the camera, it glows. When it comes out of the camera, it's not glowing when it comes outside the field of view. And so if the camera can see it, it's glowing, and when the camera doesn't see it, it's not glowing. And so the idea here is, now if I take this and I block it, it'll go dark, and with my jacket here, and when I unblock it with my jacket, it goes bright again. So it's a magic light, and what is happening here is that lamp is connected to a television receiver. This is probably the world's most powerful television receiver, a 2 kilowatt television receiver. It picks up television signals and amplifies them and goes to the light. And so this is something I built 41 years ago, and it still works. It doesn't need any software upgrades. It doesn't give me any crashes or anything, and it's 100% reliable. So this is an example of AR from 1974. And of course, what I did is I put 35 of those lights on a hockey stick and waving that through space. And that shows me this is kind of a 3D augmented reality display that allows you to see augmented reality in the world in which you are. And I call it phenomenal augmented reality or phenomenal augmented reality. Phenomenal is kind of a double entendre. It means awesome, but it also means of or pertaining to physical phenomena. And so here is my light stick, and one of the things I would do is pick up radio signals and it's basically a wearable oscilloscope that I can wave through the air. And so this is channel 7. The wavelength is about that long, a little less than 2 meters. And with this light stick, I could visualize channel 7 hanging in space and see those radio waves. And so this is how I kind of played around with augmented reality. There's my light stick. In 1981, I added this head-mounted display to it so that I could see it. And then I started doing a lot of visual art with it, visualizing these phenomena as a sort of form of visual expression. Of course, the world wouldn't be complete without Hello World. There it is at the National Gallery on exhibit. And you can see the wearable computer. This one I built into a wooden box, and it's a 2.5 kilowatt television receiver that can drive 35 lamps, and made out of stepping relays, vacuum tubes, and silicon-controlled rectifiers and triacs, various computer medium-scale chips. And so this, with a shoulder strap on there, and of course it overheated, and I had a lot of problems with it, but it was the start of something. In the foreground you can see the Polaroid camera that I used to instantly visualize it. So I had instant visualization of these radio waves and sound waves, and also to see sight itself. And then I had this work on exhibit at the Museum of Modern Art and the Stedelijk Museum, Smithsonian Institute, and various other places like that. Phenomenal augmented reality, visualizing audio. So this is a wearable version of it using LEDs from mid-'80s. And you can see here, and of course with the LED, with the various arrays of LEDs, what we're doing now is sort of exploring and visualizing phenomenal augmented reality. I have here a surveillance camera, and I have here what I call valuminescence or surveyluminescence. The lights glow when they're being watched by the camera. And in a sense, this is meta-sensing. It's the sensing of sensing and sensing the capacity of sensors to see, visualizing vision and seeing sight. And so here's the Oak Motel. Many of you have probably stayed there. And as we know, the Internet of Things gives us many of these sensors. These little cameras in the hand wash faucets are low pixel count. They're usually only 128 or 1024 pixels, not enough to really cause to see much, but just enough to see if your hands are there. But they have a sight field, and there's a sight field associated with them. And so we can kind of, my student Ryan Jansen and I are working together on quantifying valence, measuring velometrics, seeing how well things can see. So if you had an insurance company and you want to make sure that there's a certain amount of valence, you could measure that, but you might also want to make sure there's not enough valence in certain areas where you want privacy. You might want to make sure there's not too much surveillance. And so here we have a visualization of these cameras and what they can see, and so we can see the sight field. So Ryan, why don't you give a little demonstration here?
Hi there. By the way, a quick hand for Steve Mann and all his wearable computing work. So my name is Ryan Jansen, and I want to show you some cool stuff. I introduced the idea of valence flux and scientifically measuring what a camera sees. And using valence flux, how does that look? Well, I have these meta glasses here. So if we look at this, just step back a little bit here. So if we look at this surveillance camera here, you can actually see the valence flux that actually is emitted by this camera. And this whole mathematical formulation, it's a new area of physics. So it's very interesting when this it bounces around a room, and we can actually stand inside the valence field of this camera and look around to see how the valence flux hits everyone. And how do we actually measure that? Well, with a device like this, and this is a veolometer, and people keep on coming up to me and saying, well, Ryan, this looks like Ghostbusters here. And actually, that's the perfect thing to say, because this actually shows you hidden valence flux coming out of cameras, something that is all around us we can't see. It's living in the shadows, but nevertheless exists. So if you're interested in learning more about valence flux and the work we're doing, you can read some of our research papers, velometrics.com. Velometrics.com, they're posted there. So thank you.
Yes, and yes, a good hand of applause for Ryan here. Great work. So we can see now that I'll just exit from this. So we can see here we have a way of quantifying. Ryan and I have a way of quantifying and measuring valence, measuring surveillance, and seeing sight and visualizing vision. This is what we mean by meta-sensing. A meta-conversation is a conversation about conversations. A meta-joke is a joke about jokes. Metadata is data about data. Meta-sensing is the sensing of sensing. The sensing of sensors and sensing their capacity to sense. And meta-sight is sort of seeing sight and visualizing vision and so on. And of course, this photographic, what started out as a kind of years ago as a fun form of visual art with these lights moving through space, abacographic imaging. We can think of the Abacus model. There's a point in space, it's moving through a point. Imagine the bead on a wire. We have the Abacos, the Greek word from the Hebrew word avak, which means dust, and the calculating tables and how they used to do things. So we call abacographic imaging, and this becomes a user interface, a way of interacting with the world. There's Jace Hansen, he'll be up later. And so we have these pipes as metaphors, information conduits, user interfaces, 3D objects that you can handle in augmented reality using light. So this is AR from a light bulb, basically, or from lights. And so we have a space-time continuum, and we've got the abacographic principle. This kind of comes back to the wearable computing and AR vision. So started with these different sorts of devices, head-mounted displays, and ways of interacting. And so if we go back to the rabbit ears on my head with the head-mounted display and move forward to this sort of, back in 1998, I made this sort of sleek, slender aluminum frame, hingeless design that just sweeps around the head, and it uses the Itec Principle, vision-based AR, wearable camera, wearable computer, and wearable display, and this is the Itec Principle. On the left, we have a light source, and it comes across, and it bounces off a beam splitter and goes into the eye, and it's followed. The camera is imaged exactly as if it were in the eye. This is what we call the Itec Principle. And so the camera captures exactly the eyeward-bound rays of light. So when you look at somebody wearing one of these, it looks like they have a glass eye. So this is why we called it glass. So we called it the digital eyeglass, or just glass. And a lot of the way that laser imaging system works on the other side, we have Tom Furness came up with some really great ways of making imaging happening in the eye, and a tribute to him and his great work on making these things work. As a child, I played around with a lot of this sort of stuff, but I didn't have the resources to really do it in a professional sort of way, but I really admire people who took this to a new step. Finally, in the early 90s, I went down to MIT to found the MIT Wearable Computing Project, and here's an old video of that project.
It's a very, very different time for us. Steve Mann was building wearable computers in high school, and I think it's perfectly good example that here's a young man that brought with him an idea that was very much on the lunatic fringe, was very much something that people thought, well, this is kind of weird and it doesn't really make sense. And when he arrived here, a lot of people sort of said, wow, this is very interesting, and faculty became more interested, and I think it's probably one of the best examples we have of where somebody brought with them an extraordinarily interesting seed, and then it sort of, it grew, and there are many people now, so-called cyborgs in the Media Lab, and people working on wearable computers all over the place.
What I've got is I've got a computer screen in my glasses. I've been experimenting with something, what you might call wearable computing or personal computing. The real thing here is that it replaces a lot of the normal things that we carry, such as camcorder, still camera, Walkman, pager, cell phone. All of those personal electronics items are subsumed into a single apparatus because, I have a camera built into the glasses so that as I look around, the algorithm that I've developed seamlessly stitches multiple pictures together and makes them into an image composite, something I call painting with looks.
So you can see there's this kind of, and this is our group here. This is a little selfie I did with my wearable computer. I had this all set up so that I could shoot pictures of things, and I would often walk around with these lights and remotely trigger the camera and everything. So I just put the camera down and I remotely dialed into the camera, got my head-mounted display showing its viewfinder, and I could look through the viewfinder. So I could use it as a selfie machine, and it's a group shot of us. That's me on the left. On the right also is a very notable researcher, Thad Starner, and in 1993 he came up with this Tin Lizzie wearable computer, which is quite remarkable, and remembrance agent and so on, and lots of really good work. So wearable computing, 35 years ago people thought I was crazy, and Nicholas Negroponte writes, Steve Mann is the perfect example of someone on the lunatic fringe, but persisted in his vision and ended up founding a new discipline. So somehow I feel kind of vindicated that all these crazy experiments of my childhood have amounted to something. One of the things that I did, of course, was this invention of HDR, or high dynamic range imaging. That's my welding helmet, which allows me to see a dynamic range of more than 100 million to 1, and to see in complete darkness while at the same time looking at the electric arc of the TIG welder. And this is the HDR, high dynamic range imaging, digital eyeglass, various inventions along the way here. Laser ITAP, Gen 4 digital eyeglass, just a hingeless design, a sweep of metal going around the eye. This was 1998. Other companies like Google took this sort of design, this sort of single piece of aluminum going around the head, but I think they missed the boat on the infinite depth of focus laser ITAP part of it and the ITAP part of it. So going back to 1997, this is the gesture-based wearable computing, IEEE computer, 1997. I called it Sixth Sense, or synthetic synesthesia of the sixth sense. We call it Sixth Sense. And so there's the wearable face recognizer from 1996, 1997, and that's an example. Pops up virtual name tag, and as you turn your head around, it hovers the name tag on top, so it keeps it registered. Here's something visual filter to help the visually impaired. And here is the gesture-based wearable computing from 1997 using the finger. Now, in the early 90s, I had to paint my fingernails different colors or put different colored tape on my fingers. But by 1998, that was no longer necessary. We had the vision algorithm working good enough that we no longer had to buy nail polish or electrical tape in various colors. And this is, people often ask me why my nails were all painted different colors, and now I don't have to explain that anymore. Sixth Sense here is what we called it, and this is 1998, going back, and now I want to move forward to, well, call it Seventh Sense if you like, and this is kind of the meta glasses. We had this at the Consumer Electronics Show, so you could actually draw things with hand sculptures and send it to the 3D printer. So the wearable face recognizer, back in 1996, it was using 2D, but now with a 3D camera, you can get better accuracy with the face recognizer, and it gives you the chance to have an improved vision. So one of the goals here is to help people see better with the wearable face recognizer, and there's all kinds of other takes on this. Gaming is another. We're using Unity 3D so that it's really easy for game developers. Children can program this easily, so my 12-year-old loved this kind of thing. Just grab these glasses and throw together a game world and put a game in there, recognizing circular objects. And of course, you can use meta glasses to make other meta glasses. So you use your hand gestures to sculpt the next meta glass. So using the meta one to design future meta. And it's like a milling machine in that sense. You can use a milling machine to make another milling machine. So these various inventions, so there's the digital eyeglass. The glass invention was one invention. This is another invention, the wristwatch computer, the smartwatch, which I completed in 1998, and it appeared on the cover of Linux Journal in 2000. And I presented at ISSCC 2000. Contact lens display, 1999, augmented reality with contact lenses, and 2000, the implantable eyeboard camera. And this was in collaboration with a couple of filmmakers. We built a working eye camera. There's the patent for it, 2000. And here's what it looks like installed in the eye. And Desjardins, My Eye for a Camera, National Film Board, and Rob Spence and myself. 50 Best Inventions of 2009, Time Magazine. And of course, there's a lot of other good work in this area, not just myself. I'm not the only one. There's some very good work, the Dobell Eye Institute, actually helping people see by using implantable technologies. And so we can think of this in a way what we've seen before as surveillance. The Internet of Things is really surveillance. It's sensors in the environment around us. And the Internet of ourselves, of people, is surveillance. So you can see this, 1998, I made this camera necklace with sensors in it and a fisheye lens. Microsoft made a rectangular version of that, and Momodo in 2013 made a really nice, sleek, slender narrative, it's called, version of that. And surveillance is a word that means a watch kept over someone or something, especially over a suspect or prisoner. The suspects were under police surveillance. And so what word is the most important word in that definition? It appears twice as the word over. A lot of people don't understand this difference, so my 6-year-old made this nice little drawing. And I like to ask people, what part of that don't you understand? So we have surveillance, which is the Internet of Things, and we have surveillance, which is wearables. And if we put the Internet of Things and wearables together, that is surveillance and surveillance together, we get just valence. So if you take the word surveillance and cross out the politics, the first 3 letters, which is really the hierarchy behind it, you have simply valence. So valence represents the nexus of wearables and IoT. And my children love to play around with this. My 6-year-old made this little Sixpenny augmented reality system. So there's pennies in a lemon, so she soldered together wires. By the time she was 3 years old, her soldering skills were absolutely perfect. And so there's the little clips. And so she's got 6 of these connected in series. That generates about 6 volts, which is enough to overcome the voltage of an LED and a detector. And so she made this little detector system. There's a surveillance camera there, and this Sixpenny augmented reality system is tracing out the sight field of that camera and visualizing vision. So it's a phenomenon-mediated reality system made from 6 pennies, 6 zinc screws, and 6 lemons, and a detector and a LED. Red is the lowest voltage, easiest to do. And so that's definitely an example of superpowers to the people, making augmented reality available to everybody. It's affordable. So in the workshop on Monday, this is exactly what I did, is I got 250 LEDs and 250 detectors and batteries and everything. And anybody who wanted to make one, I showed them how to make this device. This one works very simple. It doesn't actually have a video feedback amplifier. It just picks up infrared and paints it out on the light. So with a long exposure photograph from the camera that you already have, You can trace out the sight field of a hand wash faucet or a urinal or a toilet or a bank machine or whatever's watching you. You can trace it out and show it and reveal it for a very low cost. Very simple device. So it got the superpowers to the people theme got me thinking that surveillance is this valence that's watching us, but often you see there's no cameras, no photography allowed, no cell phone in store, please, and then we get these QR codes here. What is that? What's a word to describe that? Give me a word that describes that. Hypocrisy. Surveillance is the valence of hypocrisy. We're going to watch you, but you're not allowed to watch us. What's the opposite of surveillance? Maybe is surveillance, but what's the opposite of hypocrisy? The opposite of hypocrisy is integrity. So we could say that surveillance is the valence that lacks integrity. The valence of hypocrisy, the valence that lacks integrity. And so I always thought this is an interesting thing, wearing these things in the real world. You know, how many people here do augmented reality in the real world, walk around wearing eyeglasses everywhere they go? What do people in department stores and places like that say about your camera? Has anybody ever been told not to wear their eyeglasses in? So here I have a seeing aid that helps people see better, but you're not allowed to wear it in the store. This is an interesting example, the CCTV tapes that were, of the Mendez case, the riddle of the missing CCTV. The police mistakenly shot and killed the wrong person, and then they seized the surveillance recordings and said that they were all blank. And so this is the valence of hypocrisy. So if we build a little table, we've got surveillance and surveillance, hypocrisy, integrity, centralized, distributed, secrecy versus openness, and so on. And so if we looked to our industry leaders and governments, these cameras are often in these domes to hide which way the camera's looking. So if we followed the example set forth by the Internet of Things and by our governments and industry leaders, us wearable folk would all walk around with these domes around our heads so nobody could see which way our head was aimed. Imagine if we followed that example that was set forth for us. So this is kind of just something to think about. I want everybody to think about valence, wearables plus IoT. Another interesting thing is quantified self. I used to call it quantimetric self-sensing. Here's my apparatus from the 1970s, which everybody laughed at, but I think we see this a little bit now. There are various brainwave sensors, heart rate sensors, all kinds of sensors on the body. It's the Internet of people, not just things. We have all around us smart floors, smart toilets, smart light switches. How about smart people? You know, it seems like a logical thing to have. And so we started a company, Interaxon, making these brain sensing headbands, and we have products on department store shelves now, and so this is a real product. We have also the brainwave-based humanistic intelligence, HI clothing, and a group of us here, Celine, Johnny, Max, Sushi, Jason, Hang, Hao, and Di Zhang, doing these smart shoes and smart sensors and so on. And so I want to kind of conclude by saying, really, we need to think about wearables and IoT on the same framework. That they're not really different things, they're valence. Surveillance and surveillance is valence together. And so let's think for a moment about wearables and IoT. Wearables is just urban design at a different scale. When I put that dome, you put that dome over your head to hide which way you're looking, you're just thinking like a building. You know, your building has a security system. You know, I'm a building, I'm a country, you know. So if we look at this axis, I've drawn across here the physical axis of atoms going from left to right, and I've labeled it with the Greek letter alpha, because atoms is a Greek word that starts with alpha. And so the alpha axis has on it city, province, country, earth, universe, but coming inwards, it's got neighborhood, street, building, clothes, body, internal cell organs of the body. And the environment is that which surrounds us. It's the Internet of Things is what's in the environment. The environment is shown in green because environmentalists like to call themselves green. And the opposite of the environment is something that I call the environment. And I've drawn that in flesh color because it's really our clothes, our body, our skin, the stuff that's not part of the environment. So the environment is is at a small physical scale, and the environment is at a big physical scale. And together I call them the environment. Take away the first two letters of the word environment, and we'll call it the environment. That's that axis there. That's the axis of atoms. Then we have the axis of bits. So we've got atoms and bits near the origin, and outward from bits we've got computer science, and on the atoms axis we've got the physical sciences. And that's beta for bits. And the third axis, gamma, is genes. So we've got alpha, beta, gamma, atoms, bits, and genes near the origin. Expanding outward from that, we've got the physical sciences, the computer science, and social sciences. And so the axis coming out of the page is the valence that we were talking about. Subvalence at the small scale of individual, couple, family, and so on, and then surveillance at the scale of corporations, nations, world governments, and they even have space law now. So we have these three axes, and they define a sort of scale space. And I think what I want to say is that to succeed in the business place, in the market, you have to think across all these scales. One of the reasons Eyeglass failed was not only because they got it wrong ergonomically, which I wrote about in the IEEE spectrum, but they also got it wrong socially. It's wrong. It's mixed up on these axes. It's wrong. It's like surveillance close to your body. And when you think of something close to your body, do you want surveillance close to your body? You know, when something's part of you, I mean, handcuffs are an example of something that's close to your body, but it's not controlled by you. So that's the kind of technology that Eyeglass, it's kind of like handcuffs in a way. It's a big kind of organizational technology that's kind of in physical proximity to your body. So it falls out of balance on these three axes. So you have to think in terms of these three axes and get it right. And finally, I want to say that virtuality is not just one-dimensional. So Milgram in 1994 made this virtuality continuum from augmented reality to augmented virtuality. That same year, I introduced the concept of mediated reality, the mediality axis. So from left to right, you've got the Milgram mixed reality continuum, and then from bottom to top, you've got the mediality continuum. And together, we have virtuality and mediality axes with reality at the origin, augmented reality going to augmented virtuality, and then from bottom to top, we've got augmented reality going to mediated reality. Diminished reality is important. And so in concluding, I want to say that AR will die. This is my prediction, is that AR is going to die. So phenomenon augmented reality is something that I was exploring in the 70s, or phenomenon mediated reality. And what I notice is the rise of AR, and I'm predicting that we're going to have the rise and fall of AR, because AR has it wrong. And so what we need also diminished reality. For example, it drives you nuts when you have all this bombardment. AR, you can have all this hype, but do you have also the ability to diminish the reality and to filter out things like ads and billboards? We should be able to bleep them out and change them to more useful subject matter. That's an example of diminished reality, is to mediate, not just augment, not just add to it, but modify. And in the upper right corner, we've got mediated virtuality. So we must think of these axes in the whole sense, because otherwise it's like surveillance is a half-truth. And the argument between surveillance and privacy, it's along one axis, but there's a second axis, which is surveillance, and that's more of a whole truth. And again, I think that we need a whole truth on mediality. So in concluding, get a meta and enjoy AWE 2015. Phenomenon augmented reality, I've started here with the sequential wave and printing machine and meta sensing. And the other thing that I want to do is create a virtual museum of all these artifacts. I still have many of the things that I built, and I also collect a lot of old televisions. I've got a massive collection of old light bulbs and television receivers and things like that. And I want to make a little museum, a virtual AR museum using AR for AR. So if there's anybody that wants to help, Tom Furness is interested in working with me, and him and I are already in conversation. If there's anybody else who wants to get involved in either of these visions, one is to create this AR museum, maybe for the Computer History Museum. I've already shown at Smithsonian and MoMA, but I think this would be perfect for the Computer History Museum. And the other is to create AR for the people. So I want to superpowers to the people. And so that's exactly what I want to do, is if anybody wants to work on this project and make super low-cost AR outreach for everybody, I'd love to get more of the Sixpenny AR stuff happening in AR from the light bulbs and all the stuff I did in my childhood when I couldn't afford anything else. I want to bring that back for other children to be inspired. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Let's take one or two questions. Just over here, to the right. There we go.
So what's the technology in the glasses you're wearing right now?
It's kind of messed up. I've been having some trouble with it. One of the problems is on Monday at the pool party, I think it got a little bit whacked. It's supposed to be IP68, but I kind of think I might have pushed it a little bit past its working point. But if you want to read about those who joined in the first day, those who signed up for the first day, you'll have a one-page summary of AR history, and there's a bunch of links there. Or if you go on here, if you go to wearcam.org or eyetap.org, EYETAP.org, you'll see the iTap, and you'll see some of the stuff that I'm doing with welding glasses and things that help people see better.
One more? Just gentleman here at the table.
Hi. Hello? Hello? Hi. My question is, I agree with you. I really want to give people superpowers as well. And I think the biggest question that I have is, from the person who is the possessor of the superpowers, their reality is augmented in a very powerful way. And the biggest complaint that I get is the people that are in that reality that are subjected to that person's superpowers. What is the answer? What is the best way to communicate to the other people in that social contract that it's okay for me to have superpowers and you're going to be part of my game?
Well, one of the problems that I used to have is people thought, wow, it freaked people out when I had these dark glasses, and I was like, I'd say, are you reading your email or are you looking at me? And it really drove people crazy. So at Ars Electronica in 1997, I did the plenary lecture there, and I also did a week-long performance. And the piece that I did was called Safety Glasses, and it was a piece where I made an outward-facing screen and an inward-facing screen. So I made an eyeglass that had an inward-facing mediated reality screen, and it had an outward-facing screen so that other people could literally see what I was seeing. So I made my view visible to everybody else, and I found that was really interesting because all of a sudden people could see what I was looking at. So when I walked up to someone, they would see their own face appear on the screen, then they'd see a little search query, and they'd see information about them pop up. And so they could actually see what I was seeing and actually share. And I found it was really fascinating because it raised the probability of me getting thrown out of a department store, but it also eased the people. I think for the really high-level officials, it drove them nuts. But for the ordinary people at the lower rungs of the social ladder, it gave them some sort of feeling of social connection because normally it's distancing, and I wanted to explore with this two-way facing screen inclusiveness, including not only those who are inside the augmediated world, but also those who are outside the augmediated world.
Great. Big round of applause for Steve Mann, everyone. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with such great people.
Thank you.